Every yontif is named Me'ein HaMe'oira. It is named for the events that happen or the mitzvah that we perform on that yontif. So Chag HaSukkos is called Chag HaSukkos because we sit in a sukkah on yontif. Chag HaMatzos, Pesach, is called Chag HaMatzos because we eat matzah on Pesach. It's also called Chag HaPesach because Hashem passed over the homes of the Bnei Yisrael on his way to effect the din of Makas Bechoros on the Mitzrim. So the Me'ena Ma'ora, the name of the Yom Tif, is a description of the events of the day. When it comes to Chag HaShavuos, what are we celebrating? We're celebrating Shavuos. A Shavua is a week. So we have counted from the day after Pesach until Shavuos. We've counted 49 days, 7 full weeks. And therefore, we have celebrated Chag HaShavuos. Is this true? Let's think about it for a moment. There are no Shavuos on Shavuos. There are no weeks on Shavuos. Chag HaShavuos, the yontif of Shavuos of weeks, is already past the weeks. The weeks ended on the 49th day. Today, Shavuos is the 50th day. Ask Rav Moshe, my Rebbe, Rav Moshe Shapiro Zatzal, where are the Shavuos on Shavuos? How can you call Shavuos a yontif of weeks when the weeks are already over? The 49th day was the night before Shavuos. On Shavuos itself, when the Shavuos comes in, there are no longer any Shavuos. So what Shavuos are you celebrating and commemorating when you're celebrating Shavuos? And in fact, the Torah tells us that it's called Shavuos. It says in Parshas Re'eh, in Bamidbar, chapter Tezayin, chapter 16, Pasuk Tes, Shiva Shavuos Tisparlach, 7 weeks you shall count, Me'achel Chermesh Bakama, when you begin to cut down the wheat. Tachel Lispor Shiva Shavuos, you shall begin to count 7 weeks. Ve'asisa Chag Shavuos, and you shall make a feast, a celebration of weeks. La Hashem Elokecha, to Hashem, Misas Nidvas Yadcha Asher Titein, Kasher Yivarechecha Hashem Elokecha, based on the offerings of your hand that you shall give as Hashem has blessed you. So the Torah itself calls it Chag Shavuos. But how can the Torah call Chag Shavuos Shavuos when we just finished counting the previous pasuk, Shiva Shavuos Tisparlach? Shavuos, the counting of the weeks, doesn't happen on Shavuos. The counting of the weeks happened before Shavuos. So what is this inyan of counting Shavuos on Shavuos when Shavuos is over? The counting of the weeks is over by the time we get to Shavuos. When we count the weeks, when we count the days of Sfiras HaOmer, we can create weeks from a Tuesday to a Tuesday, from a Wednesday to a Wednesday. So we can create a week in the middle of the week. Sheva Shabbasos Tamimos Tiena, 7 full weeks you shall count, can also be not from Sunday to Sunday, as the Tzedukim said. The Tzedukim, the Sadducees said that it must be that you should count the Macharas HaShabbos, on the day after Shabbos. Shabbos is Pesach. So they hold that you count on Sunday. And Yontif always happens on Saturday night, Sunday. Why? You shall count after the Shabbos. Shabbos is called Pesach. And therefore, after Shabbos, you start counting. When's that? Saturday night. So the Tzdukim take the Torah literally. And this is a main dispute between the Tzdukim and the Perushim. We have the Perushim, and the Tzdukim follow the literal word of the Torah, and we follow the oral Torah that goes together with the written Torah. We say that Shabbos does not mean Shabbos. It means Pesach. Vayim Marachas HaShabbos, because Hashem reached into the world and completely redeemed us from Egypt without our efforts. Therefore, Pesach is called Shabbos. Why? Because Pesach is a time when it was a Shabbos-dika opportunity for Hashem to involve himself in the world without our efforts. Yontif, on the other hand, Yontif has our efforts. We go and we witness the new moon. We bring witnesses to the Beis Din, and the Beis Din declares a new moon. So we have a hand in declaring Yontif based on seeing the new moon, and we witnesses come. Klal Yisrael comes to the Beis Din and participates in the creation of Yontif. When we see the new moon, then we count 6 days, and that is the sixth day is already Shavuos. Or we see the new moon on Nisan, the first of Nisan, and 14 days later, at the end of 14 days, the 15th day is Pesach. We determine when Pesach is. We determine when Yontif is based on the calendar. But the first Pesach, it was completely Hashem. We had no involvement whatsoever in that. Hashem reached into the world, did the miracles of the 10 plagues in Yetzias Mitzrayim, and therefore we are considering Pesach to be Shabbos. That's where the Torah says you shall start counting after Shabbos. It doesn't mean Shabbos. It means the Inyan, which was called Shabbos, which is Pesach, that Hashem did everything and we did nothing. A total submission and humility to Hashem. And therefore we can count after Pesach, which means if Pesach happened on Monday night, we start counting on Tuesday night. We count 7 weeks from Tuesday night until 7 weeks later, Tuesday night, which means we can create time from Tuesday to Tuesday, not the regular Shabbos to Shabbos, but from Tuesday to Tuesday, Wednesday to Wednesday. And therefore we can create time. We can see certain time periods in nature. We can witness them. A day is seen by the sun and the moon combining for a 24-hour period. So we see a day unfolding before our eyes. A month we see unfolding before our eyes, the new moon. We see the Chidush HaYareach. We see the new moon. We see a moon renewing itself on Rosh Chodesh. And therefore the world, nature, reflects a month. We can actually see the month happening with a new moon. We also see a year because we see that the earth orbits the sun once every 365 and a quarter days. And therefore we see that orbit and we can monitor it and see it with a telescope that the earth surrounds the sun once every year. And therefore we see the effects in nature, in the world, in the universe of the year. So we see a day, we see a month, we see a year. We don't see a week. Unbelievable deher, unbelievable idea. We do not see the existence of a week in nature. We only know that there's something called a week. We only know there's something called Shabbos, that Hashem told us there's something called Shabbos, in that he created the world and he renewed it every Shabbos. He renews it every Shabbos. It says, Ki sheishes yamim asa Hashem es hashamayim v'haaretz. Ki sheishes yamim. 6 days God created the heaven and the earth. It does not say Ki bish sheishes yamim, in 6 days. Rather, Ki sheishes yamim. Hashem created the world 6 days. Says the Rashba, 6 days means Hashem creates the world only for 6 days at a time. Comes Shabbos and it renews the world for another 6 days. That's the impetus, that's the chizuk, the empowerment we get on Shabbos, is that the world is re-empowered, the world is reinstituted, the world is rejuvenated on Shabbos, because the world only exists, ki sheishes yamim. The world only exists for 6 days. And the seventh day, it renews itself. Shabbos is the power to renew it, through the recognition that God is the creator. That itself recognizes that the world was created by Hashem, and therefore that recognition by human beings, by us, therefore gives impetus in that partnership with Hashem. Hashem creates and we recognize that creation, that partnership. Hashem creates and we recognize. That partnership makes us shutfim with Hashem and Masav Reshis. Partners. Make Kiddush, we are shutfim, partners with Hashem and Masav Reshis. We recognize his creation of the world. We tap into his creation. That gives the impetus for another 6 days. We do not see the week in the world. We do not see the week in nature. We see a day, we see a month, we see a year, but we do not see a week. Therefore, the idea of Shabbos is that we are submitting our will to Hashem on Shabbos. Shabbos means I submit myself to the creation of Shabbos, that Hashem is the creator of the day, of the month, and of the year. But it's a hidden creation that it does not manifest. It's a hidden creation which does not manifest itself in nature. And we have to define it, we have to find it, we have to discover it, we have to find Hashem's hand in that week. And therefore, by virtue of getting the Torah, we get the power of Shavuos. What does that mean? We get the power to count time. We can create our own Shava Shabbosos Tamimos Tiena. We create our own 7 days, 7 times during Sphira, from Tuesday to Tuesday, from Wednesday to Wednesday. And therefore, the power to create time, the power to recognize time, the power to create ourselves and to recreate ourselves comes through the Torah. The power of Shavuos, the weeks occur because of the Torah. That's where the Shavuos is. The Shavuos, the weeks that this Yom Tov is called Shavuos, is because the power for us to create Shavuos, for us to create weeks between Pesach and Shavuos, and therefore we count toward the Torah that gave us the power to create weeks in the first place. Hashem made time. He created time. One cannot see time. God created the concept called time. And therefore he gave us the power over time to count a new kind of time. While we were still in Egypt, Hashem gave us the first mitzvah as a nation called Rosh Chodesh. HaChodesh Chazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month is a new month for you, the month of all months, the beginning of all months. And therefore, while in Egypt, while it's steeped in Avodah Zarah, while it's steeped in the sun god, in the world of time of 1 year, Hashem extricated us and gave us the power to extricate ourselves from that Tumah of Mitzrayim by counting a new form of time. That was Rosh Chodesh. That was the first mitzvah he gave us. And that was formalized 50 days later when we came out of Mitzrayim and Hashem gave us the Torah. He gave us the power to formalize time by sanctifying Rosh Chodesh, by counting 7 weeks between Pesach and Shavuos, which are not regular weeks, but weeks from Tuesday to Tuesday, Wednesday to Wednesday. And therefore, we have the ability to be masters over Shavuos, masters over our own time. All we have is time. The only way we can exist in this world is through time, through the continuum of time. So the greatest gift Hashem gave us is the power over time, to count time. And that's why he said, count for yourselves, count time, make time count. What do we say about time? What do we say in Shechianu? Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazeman hazeh. That you gave us life, that you established us, and we arrived. Lazeman hazeh. What is zman? Says Rav Moshe. Zman means, time means hazmana. The root word of hazmana, invitation, is zman. We're invited to meet God in a particular point of time. That's a moed. A moed is a va'ad, a connection, a time of assembly, a time of connection with God. He gives us the opportunity, he invites us to connect with him, with the midah, with the idea, the concept that occurred on that Yom Tov. Hashem invites us to connect with his concept of freedom and to embrace our own freedom to serve Hashem on Pesach. He invites us to connect with the Torah, the power over time, the power over creating our own lives and choosing to be creators, many creators like Hashem. On Shavuos, he invites us, Hazmana, he invites us to reconnect with time and the power over time. And on Sukkos, he invites us, to connect with Emunah, sitting in the Sukkah of faith. Every Yom Tov is a Hazmana, Lazman, to invite us to connect with him and the concepts he brought into the world on that Yom Tov. We have, and all we have, is time. If you imagine a person who was born in 1857, and the person died in 1957, how is that formulated on his matzeva? It says 1857-1957. All of his life is encapsulated in that dash. Time is represented by that dash. And you look at a matzeva and you see 1857-1957, all of his life and all the time that he spent in this world and all of his efforts and his creations happen in that dash. The question is, what is going to be in our dash? Let's think about that. When we go to a levaya, we go to a cemetery, and we see the dash. That dash is speaking to us, challenging us. What are we doing with our zman? We are being invited to live that dash, to fulfill that dash, to embrace that dash, to fill up that dash with meaningful use of time. The preparation of Shavuos is what the Mishnah in Avos says, Derech Eretz, Kadma LaTorah. Good midos precedes Torah. Reb Chaim Vital asked the question, why is there no bracha over midos? Why don't we say a bracha over giving tzedakah? Why don't we say a bracha over, I am now going to be kind to my wife? I'm now going to be kind to my husband. Why don't we say, I'm now going to show chesed and sensitivity and consideration for my children? Isn't midos tovos a mitzvah? Says Reb Chaim Vital, Hashem is only giving the Torah to those who are already cognizant and conscious and working on their midos. We don't make a bracha on midos because derech eretz kadma la Torah. Midos precedes the Torah. Hashem assumes that we're already working on our midos, and then he gives us the Torah to self-actualize through the Torah's framework. The Ramban in Bamidbar, chapter 23, pasuk 15, says the mitzvah of counting the 49 days from Pesach to Shavuos is a spiritual parallel to the mitzvah of counting 49 years up to Yovel, up to the Jubilee year, the 50th year. When we count, we are saying, says the Ramban, we want to better ourselves. In order to achieve this growth, says the Ramban, we need to go through 7 Shabboses and 7 times 7 years of counting Yovel to achieve that personal growth. Sphira says, Sphira is therefore the vehicle for us to achieve self-actualization. To arrive at our true self, we require Sphira. In order to get the Torah, we need to count and count ourselves in and work on ourselves through the 7 weeks and the meaning of the 7 weeks in order to be meriting the receiving of the Torah on Har Sinai. Our true self wants to do the right thing. This process of clarifying and arriving at our true self, the will to do MS, must be done only by ourselves. Usfartem lachem, count for yourselves. Nobody can count the Sphira for you. Nobody can count Sphira for you. You have to count for yourself. Usfartem lachem, count for yourselves. On the Yontif, we say, Mekadesh Yisrael v'azmani. Sanctify Israel, and Israel sanctifies the time, zmani. The counting of Sphira is the vehicle of self-development. The Orach Chaim in Vayikra, chapter 23, verse 15, and the Zayar explain that every week of the Sphira, we work on some new particular midah that Hashem has placed in the world, and we can absorb the energy of that midah to grow in that particular attribute during the 7 weeks of the Omer. The first week is called Chesed. This is called unconditional giving, which is the essence of love. Hashem gives of himself freely and unconditionally. The question is, how can we work on our giving unconditionally? Let's think about it. How often do we give love conditionally? Like we expect things in return, favors from our neighbor, and we expect naches from our children. We can grow in chesed by transforming our conditional giving into unconditional giving. I give because I want to act like Hashem. If we give in this fashion to our spouses and our children, we can become closer to Hashem by emulating Hashem. Liz damos lekono, to be like Hashem. The second sphera is called givura. Gevura is strength, which really means self-control. The first midah is chesed, giving. The second midah is hold back that giving. Why? If you give too much, you will lose yourself. Real leadership means showing power over yourself to restrain yourself. Hold yourself back from saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. I must therefore work on the second week of the Sphira. I work on my Gvura, self-control, holding back my anger, holding back my pain. As Pirkei Avos says in chapter 4, Mishnah 1, Eizahu Hagibor Hakovesh es Yitzro. Who is mighty? He who overcomes his inclination to do what? To be angry, to be mad, to say things incorrectly. You have to let go of the idea of, I want things to work out for me, and transform that into what works for the relationship. The relationship is bigger than me. So restraint means I restrain my ego, my instinctive, impulsive self, and look to what's bigger than me. This is Gevura. We recognize Hashem is bigger. He is the arbiter. He is the creator. I too, therefore, can work on my spouse, my relationship with my spouse and children, by saying what's right, not for me, but what's right for something bigger than me, the relationship. The third week is Tiferes, balance. The harmony and balance between giving on the one hand, chesed on the one hand, and gevura, self-control on the other hand, is called balance. Finding that balance of giving and self-control. That's why Tiferes is called emes. Emes is truth, the balance between right and left, between chesed and gevura, between the beginning and the end, and that's the middle pathward. That's the middle pathway, and that's called a thing of beauty because it represents harmony, a balance of two sides. The fourth midah is called netzach. Netzach conveys the concept of leadership. A person who asserts netzach asserts his identity through leading. The source of this idea is menatseach, which means to conquer. The Radak in Sefer HaSharashim says that menatseach means to conquer somebody else. That's netzach. But a leader is one who gives of himself, not because he wants to dominate others. Rather, he wants to inspire others and influence others to themselves be good. Real leadership is not telling people what to do, but empowering them to do the right thing themselves. An example of this is in the spousal relationship, where we do not want to dominate or control our spouse, but guide and lead and inspire our spouse to be the best we can be. As a father, I want to inspire my children to be their best, not to control or overwhelm or dominate them with my power. I don't want to be aggressive or bully. I can be assertive and empowering and inspiring, but not controlling. I was having trouble getting my 16-year-old son to go to sleep. He would tell me that in the morning he was so tired, getting very little sleep at night, 5 hours sleep, he would fall asleep during shir. So every night, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. Come on, what's going on? He wouldn't listen. He says, Abba, I need time to unwind. Came back from yeshiva at 9:30 at night. I get back, go to Mariv, and then I have to unwind. I chill till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, but 1 o'clock in the morning, get up at 6:30, 5.5 hours is not enough to be able to be awake during shir. And I kept pushing, nagging, kept on pushing, nagging. And I realized once that he's resisting my domineering or controlling his behavior. So I said to him one night, I said, what time is carpool? 7. What time do you get up? 6:30. How many hours of sleep do you need at night? 7. What time is it now? 1:30. What do you think? He said, you know what? I think I'm going to go to sleep now. I let him come to his own conclusion. Leadership means letting somebody else come to their own decision, respecting their self-esteem and their ability to decide for themselves, but leading them to that conclusion, not forcing. I think you should do this. I think you must do this. You have to do this. Do this. That's overly dominating, helicopter parenting, demanding, controlling, and the child will resist that just for the sake of showing his own independence. Leadership means teaching them through leading them to the conclusion and let them decide for themselves. So what do you want to do? Oh, I think I'll go to sleep now. Cool, good idea. That's called Netzach, leadership. The fifth midah on the fifth week is called Hod. Hod comes from Hoda'ah, which means humility, admission, and submission. In the Netzach Hod relationship, Netzach gives, Hod receives. Hod means being humble and open to other people's ideas, which is the opposite of arrogance. When I believe I know best and no one else has anything to teach me. As it says in Pirkei Avos, chapter 4, Mishnah 1, Eizehu hachacham haloimed mikol adam. Who is wise? He who learns from every person. So Hod is the humility to submit myself to the guidance of a Rebbe, someone wiser and more experienced than I am. One who does not accept humility cannot accept Das Torah. That's why Chazal tell us in Pirkei Avos, chapter 1, Mishnah 16, Aseh lecha Rav. Every family must have a Rav. Every family must have a Rav, a personal family Rav, who knows them, who guides them, who understands their family, to be able to guide them in the right direction. For that, you need Hod. Hod is Hodah, submission and humility, to submit yourself to the will of Das Torah. The sixth dimension, which is this week, is called Yisod. Yisod means connection. When a husband and wife live in a harmonious, giving relationship, they are experiencing Yisod, foundation, connection. Zachar, Nekeva, male and female, working together as a reciprocal team, a unit, represents Hashem. As the Torah tells us in Bereshit chapter 1, pasuk 27, Vayivra Elokim es Adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elokim bara oso, Zachar u'Nekeva bara osam. The first man was a combined being, an androgynous being of male and female together. That is the representation of the divine. Representation of Hashem is the man and woman working together as a team. One can work on developing this week, this teamwork, this unit, this achdus in a family by spending the thing we've been talking about tonight with your spouse. That's called time. All we have is time. Unless we invest in our relationship with our spouse, investing time, we cannot build the relationship of emotional connection with our spouse. We need to spend time daily together, whether it's learning 5 minutes together, whether it's going for a walk together, whether it's spending a family dinner together, working on a chesed project together, going on family outings with the children and grandchildren, sharing articles, or learning together. Connection, Yisod, does not happen by itself. It must be built. And a proactive investment of time must be made by sharing common values and common connection, things we believe in. And one way of doing that is sit down with your spouse and ask your spouse, let's make a list of the things that we share. We share certain values, certain goals, certain avoda. That is what connects a husband and wife. We share certain goals to serve Hashem. What are those goals? What are the goals with which we share to serve Hashem? Emunah, loyalty to family, giving of ourselves, the work ethic, chesed, avodas Hashem, zmiros. Make a list with your spouse, and we can this week renew the yisod of our respective relationships with our spouses by focusing on the time and the shared values that we share in order to build that yisod, that connection of husband and wife. The last week, which is next week, is called Malchus, the seventh week. Malchus means to be like a king. Hashem is the Melech, Malchei Avlachim, the King of Kings. And while kings rule, legislate, and lead, the main job of a king is to provide, to give, to provide for his people. A king gives health care, fire protection, garbage collection. That's what a job of a king is. Hashem is the King of Kings because he is the giver who provides for us. So when we make a bracha and we say the name Melech, Baruch Ata Hashem, Hashem, you are the source. Baruch Ata Hashem, you are the source. Melech Olam, the giver to me. Borei Pri Eitz, you give me this apple. When I make a bracha on an apple, I look at this apple and I say, Baruch Ata Hashem, you're the source. Melech, the giver of this apple, the giver of this world. Borei, you created this apple for me. It's a personal relationship with God as Melech. God is the Melech who gave me this apple. Where did the apple come from? The apple came from a tree. This tree over here. Where did this tree come from? From a seed in a previous apple over here. Where did that apple come from? From a tree over here. Where did that tree come from? From a seed in a previous apple over here. Where did that apple come from? From a tree. Where did that tree come from? From a seed in a previous apple. Where did that apple come from? From a tree. How far does this go back? This chain of apple from a tree, from a seed in a previous apple, which came from a tree, which came from a seed in a previous apple, goes back to the beginning of time. Therefore, when you make a bracha over a fruit or a vegetable, you are saying that I receive this apple, this gift, this fruit, and Hashem had me in mind from the beginning of time, which means from Gan Eden, when God planted the first tree and created the first tree, in that first apple, in that first tree, was the progenitor and DNA to create all the chain of tree, apple, seed, tree, apple, seed, tree, apple, seed, throughout the past 5,000 years to give me this apple right now in 2021. Which means that Hashem knew from the beginning of time that this genealogy and intergenerational process of tree, apple, seed, tree, apple, seed is a continuum to give me this apple. When I make a bracha on the apple and I say, I am not recognizing that genealogy. When I make a bracha without kavana, and I just say it as words, I am not stopping to think about the fact that Hashem had me in mind. Why should we have kavana over eating an apple? Because Hashem had us in mind from the beginning of time that I was going to have this apple in 2021. And therefore, I have to recognize that. Now, I don't have to, but if I want to connect with Melech, Malchi Amlachim, the King of Kings, and have a close relationship with God, it's not a chiyuv to make a bracha with kavana because Hashem is lording himself over us. Rather, he's offering us hazmana, an invitation to connect with him and to recognize he gave me this apple. Baruch Atah Hashem, you're the source, the giver of this apple. In the beginning of time, you gave this to me. Wow, thank you, Hashem. When I feel that, I'm conscious of that, making a bracha in that fashion, then I'm developing a relationship with Melech, Malchus, the King of Kings. Malchus comes from gratitude. When we have gratitude, then we can ourselves become like Hashem by giving of ourselves to others. And that is the 7-step process, the 7-week process. We're in Yesod right now, the 6th week. It's Hashem next week, Malchus, and we should join together next week in the week of Malchus to receive the Torah again on Har Sinai.